And so it is remarkable today that Afreximbank has convened us to celebrate the success, the achievement of my senior brother. What many of you may not know is that there are two people that have had a profound impact during my tenure as your servant as Secretary General. First, it is my boss, that is my wife, who has been a very strong pillar of support. And then Professor Orama, who has supported me personally and the institution, the AfCFTA Secretariat, from the very beginning. I received a letter from him when I was elected to this position, and the letter congratulated me and offered us support. I came into this position as a civil servant, public servant. I'm still a public servant. And it was the very first time that I saw $10 million written in a letter to me when I received that letter of support from President Orama stating that Afreximbank will commit up to $10 million to support the establishment of a strong institution to achieve a long-standing objective of market and economic integration in our continent. And so building on the very strong legacy that Presidents Edordu and Jean-Louis Ekra, a very strong foundation, Professor Orama has evolved Afreximbank into a global institution, a continental powerhouse for financing trade and fostering industrial capacity and restoring confidence in Africa's economic promise, and more importantly, asserting that African institutions led by Africans are indeed able to deliver on this long-standing principle and promise of boosting industrial development in Africa, of supporting innovation, and indeed of setting the building blocks for expedited industrial development. Over the years, the AfCFTA Secretariat, as well as Afreximbank, have developed a very strong partnership, which has resulted in very concrete support for many businesses, large corporations in Africa, small medium enterprises, as well as our industrial giants that we heard about earlier today, and the creative industry. You may be aware that our continent has 42 currencies. You may also be aware that when, as Africans, we want to trade amongst one another, we resort to a third currency. However, since the establishment of the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, we as Africans should stand proud and tall that today we are able to trade in our local currencies, reducing the cost of trade in Africa. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, as we speak, is a reality. And I want to congratulate once again Professor Orama for the tenacity and the vision to ensure that it does indeed become a reality. We have also, for the very first time, established, through his leadership, the AfCFTA Adjustment Fund, which has been capitalized by a seed amount of $1 billion. And we have committed to raise up to $10 billion to ensure that as we implement the AfCFTA, no country is left behind. Recently, in Algeria, we co-convened the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, which you will recall was a commitment that was made in May 1963, but which unfortunately evaded us for many decades until Professor Orama made it a reality in 2018. In Algiers, over $70 billion worth of trade deals and transactions were concluded, and mainly benefiting small medium enterprises and youthful entrepreneurs. The African Union, the FCFTA Secretariat, we do not have a balance sheet, a capital amount. We're not intended to. What we do have, however, is political authority. And we must defend our institutions. We must defend those who lead our institutions. When our leaders, such as Professor Orama, assert their economic independence and the economic liberalization and liberation of our continent, because they are courageous, there will, of course, be consequences. And so, do not be surprised when you read about downgrading by those institutions that are outside of our continent. If you fight a pre-existing system that subjugates our continent, not everybody will appreciate that. And so, when Professor Orama reminds us, and I want to quote him, and he himself quotes the words of Benjamin Burumbo, I quote, "Each time I want to fight for African rights, I use only one hand because the other hand is busy trying to keep away Africans that are fighting me," end quote. The African Union, the FCFTA Secretariat, we must use our political force to defend our institutions, to defend our industrialists, and to ensure that those African institutions that deploy African capital to advance on this long-standing objective of economic freedom of our continent, not only do they deserve our support, they deserve the African Union to stand shoulder to shoulder with them in support of our common objectives. And so I want to pay tribute today to you, my senior brother, for your courage. I want to also pray, more importantly, pay tribute to Mrs. Orama and the family for, as others have said, sharing him with us as a continent. The final observation I would make is this, that President Mandela said, "It all seems impossible until it is done." Last month, when you hosted Professor Orama at the FCFTA Secretariat for his farewell speech, a journalist asked him, what is it that 10 years ago you would have wished you would have done differently? And his response was, I have done everything that I said I would do 10 years ago. That, my friends, is what President Mandela was talking about when he said, it all seems impossible until it is done. And so your enduring legacy is that Africa must finance her own development, that Africa must finance her own industrial innovation, and must finance her own private sector, so that we can be globally competitive and create jobs for millions and millions of young people.